So here is the thing about Doctor Doom that I think gets lost in all the discourse about whether he is a villain or an anti-hero or a misunderstood monarch or whatever other label people reach for when they're trying to make sense of him. The thing that gets lost is this: his very first appearance in a comic book, the first time Marvel ever put him on a page, the first impression Stan Lee and Jack Kirby decided to make with what would become one of the most iconic characters in the history of the medium, was a pirate heist, not a world domination speech, not a confrontation with the Fantastic Four, not a scientific experiment gone wrong, or a monologue about the inferiority of lesser men. The man showed up, already in full armour, with the green cloak and the metal face, and the entire aesthetic fully formed, as if he had always existed, and he immediately sent the Fantastic Four backwards in time to steal Blackbeard the pirate's treasure chest. That is the introduction. That is Doctor Doom's opening move. And I think that tells you everything, really, because only a certain kind of character gets to walk into their debut doing something that specific and that strange and that slightly ridiculous and still come across as utterly serious. Doom manages it because he always manages it. The armour helps. The third-person self-referencing helps. The fact that he is simultaneously one of the most brilliant scientists and one of the most accomplished sorcerers in the entire Marvel universe helps quite a lot as well. But mostly, it is just that the character has this extraordinary internal coherence, this sense that every single thing he does, no matter how baroque, makes complete sense within the logic of being Doctor Doom. And that is what I want to spend tonight talking about, really. Not just the plot beats, though there are quite a lot of those, and some of them are genuinely extraordinary. More the shape of the character, where he came from, what made him, what he actually wants, and why, after 60 plus years on the page, he still feels like one of the most interesting people in any room he walks into. Part of what makes Doom particularly good company for a late night is that he is not a simple story. He is not a man who did one bad thing and cannot stop. He is not purely a power fantasy, though power fantasies are threaded through him. He is not a redemption arc that never quite arrives, though that energy is also present. He is all of those simultaneously, and the weight of that is what makes him genuinely inexhaustible as a subject. You can come back to different aspects of him at different times in your life and find that the thing that resonates has shifted, because the character is big enough to hold multiple readings. When I first really read about Doom properly, not just encountering him in crossover events or as a tertiary threat in someone else's story, but actually spending time in his specific comics, what struck me was how much of his story is about the specific texture of grief. Not in a grand operatic sense, in the much quieter sense of a person who was shaped by loss before they were old enough to process it, and who built everything afterward on top of that foundation. The armour is very easy to read as ego and power. It takes a bit longer to see that the ego and the power were always, at some level, responses to things that happened to a very young child in a very cold forest. Something to keep in mind as we go. Underneath all the armour and the schemes and the cosmic ambition, there is a person in there. The comics are, at their best, the story of what it costs to be both at once. There is a lot of ground to cover. Victor Von Doom has been appearing in Marvel Comics since 1962. He has been a dictator, a sorcerer, a time traveller, a thief of cosmic power, a god, an Iron Man, and on at least one occasion a man who very quietly broke down crying because he had a vision of his sons scarring their own faces to look like him. He contains multitudes. He would hate that phrase, and also know it was accurate. If you are new to Doom, welcome. If you have been reading about him for years, hopefully there is something here that is interesting to turn over in your mind. Either way, there is no rush. We have plenty of time. And if you are the kind of person who wants to subscribe before we get into it, which does genuinely help the channel, I will not lie about that. Now is a fine time. Otherwise, let us just get into it. We are going to start at the beginning. Not with the armour, not with Latveria, not with Reed Richards. We are going to start with a Romani camp outside a town called Harsenstadt, in a tiny corner of Eastern Europe that does not technically exist, and with a woman named Cynthia, who made a very bad deal. Latveria is one of those fictional countries that Marvel uses as a sort of catch-all for a particular flavour of Eastern European atmosphere. The castles, the fog, the vaguely medieval infrastructure coexisting with whatever advanced technology the plot requires. According to Marvel's geography, it sits somewhere near Hungary, with the fictional countries of Simcaria and Transia as neighbours, and Transylvania not far off at all, which is either a very deliberate choice or an enormous coincidence given the kind of man who eventually takes the throne there. The country, when Victor von Doom is born, is under the control of Baron Vladimir Fortunov, and I want to be clear about what that means in practice, because it matters for understanding everything that comes after. The Romani people living in Latveria, including the Zephyro clan, which is Victor's clan, are specifically and persistently persecuted under the Baron's rule. Not background misery, targeted misery, the kind where soldiers come to the camp and do what soldiers under cruel rulers do, and the people there have no real recourse because the law is whatever the Baron says it is. Victor is born into this. Both of his parents are remarkable people, in completely different ways, and both of them will be gone before he is old enough to understand what he has lost. His mother, Cynthia von Doom, is a sorceress, genuinely powerful by the accounts we get across various tellings of the story. She leads the clan for a time. She uses what she knows of magic to try and protect her people from the Baron and his men. She is, by every indication, the kind of person who refuses to be ground down when everything around her is designed to do exactly that. When Victor is about 4 years old, Cynthia makes a deal with Mephisto. The Demon Lord, Marvel's version of the devil more or less, though the specifics get complicated, offers her power in exchange for her soul. She knows what she's agreeing to. She agrees anyway, because the alternative is watching her people suffer indefinitely, and that is not something she is willing to do. And Mephisto, as Mephisto reliably does, gives her exactly what she asked for, and none of what she needed. He gives her the power, but no means of controlling it. When she attempts to fight a group of the Baron's soldiers, something goes terribly wrong. The magic overwhelms her, and not just the soldiers die. Children in a nearby village are killed as well, caught in something she could not contain. She is stabbed during the chaos. She manages to make it back to Werner before she dies. She makes him promise to keep Victor away from dark magic. Werner buries her in an unmarked grave, so the Baron cannot find out what happened. Victor grows up without a mother and without a grave to visit. Werner von Doom is a different kind of person entirely. A healer, a pacifist, a man who understood how the world worked and had made a quiet peace with not being able to change it. He was respected enough that the Baron knew his name. That turns out to be a problem. When the Baron's wife falls gravely ill with what is described as an incurable cancer, the Baron orders Werner to the castle, not invites, orders, "Come and heal my wife." Or, Werner goes. He tries everything he knows. It is not enough. The Baron declares him a murderer, which is not at all what happened, but that is rather the point of being a Baron in this kind of story, and sentences him to death. Werner escapes with young Victor. They run into the forest in winter. Werner does not have proper clothing. He wraps Victor in his own cloak, in everything he has, and keeps the boy warm through the night. By morning, Werner von Doom has died of exposure in the snow. Victor survives because his father spent his last hours making sure the cold could not get to him. I find this detail genuinely affecting every time I come back to it. It is a specific kind of grief. The knowledge that you're alive because someone else chose to be cold, so you did not have to be. And Victor is young. He knows enough to understand what happened, but not enough to do anything with that understanding except carry it. He makes his way back to the Romani camp. He grows up there amongst the Zephyro clan, and it is worth dwelling on this part for a moment. because I think it is easy to skip past the years in the camp and go straight to the scholarship and the university. But Victor spends a significant portion of his childhood and adolescence in that community, and it shapes him in ways that the comics acknowledge, even if they do not always foreground. The Zephyro are his people. He continues to identify as Roma throughout his adult life, in the armour, on the throne, as God Emperor of Battleworld. It is not a detail he abandons when he becomes powerful. There are storylines where he specifically intervenes to help Romani people in various situations, not generously, not without self-interest exactly, but with a consistency that suggests something real. The camp is where he forms his first understanding of community, of collective survival, of what it means to belong to a group that the world is actively arranged against. That understanding becomes, eventually, the emotional foundation of how he governs Latveria. He knows what it feels like to be the people on the wrong side of a baron's decree. He just never extends that knowledge into a political philosophy that limits his own authority. Slowly, secretly because of his mother's dying wish relayed through Werner, he begins to discover the magical artifacts she left behind. He teaches himself, he experiments, he has his mother's aptitude and none of her caution, which is probably inevitable given that he never really got to know her. The magic is done quietly, without telling anyone, testing what he can do, what the limits are, and what happens when you push past the limits carefully versus less carefully. He has his mother's power, and he is slowly learning from the inside why she asked Werner to keep him away from it. Some things are easy when they should not be. That easiness is its own warning. Alongside the magic, something else starts to emerge. Victor is, by any measure, extraordinarily intelligent, specifically in science and engineering, though that word feels a bit small for what he is eventually capable of. Stories of his ability spread gradually outward from the Romani camp. Robots he has built, problems he has solved, inventions that should not exist given his resources. There is a detail in the expanded canon about Victor killing a soldier who catches him alone one night, strangling the man to protect himself. And what stays with him afterward is not pride or triumph. His hands shake for a day. He looks at them and thinks, "I have become my mother's son." He meant it as a condemnation of himself. He is wrong about it, but it tells you what kind of person he is at this point, still young enough to be horrified by what survival requires. Eventually, a scout from State University in New York arrives in Latveria looking for exceptional scientific minds. Whether he was specifically looking for Victor or simply found him is a detail that varies across different versions of the story. Either way, the offer comes: a scholarship, passage to America, the chance to go somewhere and become something. Victor von Doom, orphaned child of a dead witch and a man who froze to death in a forest, packs whatever he has and gets on a boat. He is going to meet Reed Richards. That meeting is going to go very badly, in ways neither of them will stop paying for the rest of their lives. But that is the next part. State University in New York, for those unfamiliar with Marvel's academic landscape, is one of those fictional institutions that pops up whenever a character needs to have gone to university somewhere prestigious enough to matter. It is not quite the same prestige tier as Empire State or Manhattan Metro. It is more the kind of place that collects genuinely exceptional scientific minds and puts them in the same building and waits to see what happens. What happens when Victor von Doom arrives is that there is already someone there who occupies the position Victor had assumed he would walk into. The position of the smartest person in every room. Reed Richards. Now, the Doom-Richards rivalry is one of the oldest and most analysed relationships in Marvel Comics, and I want to be a bit careful about how I frame it here, because I think it is very easy to flatten it into something simpler than it actually is. It is tempting to say they hated each other immediately, and that is not quite right. It is more that they were two people who had each spent their entire lives being the exception. the one who understood things others could not follow, the one who solved problems that stopped everyone else, and suddenly they were not the exception anymore. There was another one. Reed, by all accounts, was genuinely friendly, polite, curious, interested in Victor's work. He was also, without particularly meaning to be, precisely the kind of person Victor found most difficult, someone who was equally capable and considerably less tortured about it. Reed's scientific genius coexisted easily with a kind of open warmth that Victor had never had much access to. That combination, the effortlessness of it, was probably more aggravating than any amount of deliberate competition would have been. Victor, for his part, was not easy company. He was brilliant, and he knew it, and he had spent his whole life in circumstances that gave him very few reasons to be soft about that knowledge. He had survived things. He had taught himself things that universities do not teach. He had arrived in America carrying the full weight of everything that had happened in Latveria, and he was not in the habit of putting that weight down. They are not quite friends. They are not quite enemies. They are two extraordinary people occupying the same space and neither quite knowing what to do with the other. And then Victor builds his machine. The project that consumes him during his time at State University is, and this is the part that I think matters enormously for understanding who Doom is, not a weapon. It is not a world domination tool. It is not even particularly about proving his superiority over Reed or anyone else. It is a device designed to contact the spirit of his dead mother. Cynthia's soul, as Victor now knows from her artifacts and his own study of the mystical arts, is in Mephisto's realm. She made a deal and she lost it, and she has been there since before he was old enough to form memories of her. Victor von Doom, genius scientist and self-taught sorcerer, is trying to build a machine that will let him talk to his mum. That is what is underneath the machine. That is always what is underneath the machine. Reed Richards looks at Victor's calculations and finds an error. He says so. There are different accounts of exactly how this exchange goes. Some versions have Reed being quite diplomatic about it. Some have him being the blunt academic type who states the problem without much social grace. Either way, Victor hears it and dismisses it. He does not correct the error. He does not even, by most accounts, seriously consider it. Whether the error was actually, there is a point of genuine debate in Doom's comics history. Some writers have played it as Reed being straightforwardly right. The calculation was wrong, and the explosion that followed was the direct consequence of that mistake. Other writers have suggested the error Reed found was not the one that caused the problem, or that Victor would have found and corrected it himself, given more time. What is consistent across versions is that Victor does not accept the correction, proceeds with the experiment, and the experiment goes wrong. Victor's face is scarred, not catastrophically. Accounts agree that the initial wound is actually minor. One small mark on his face, the kind of thing that in almost any other person would be something they accepted and moved on from. But Victor does not accept it. The scar represents failure. His failure with his machine, which was going to reach his mother, which now will not because something went wrong, that he was told might go wrong, and he chose not to listen. He is expelled from the university. He leaves. This is the moment. Not the explosion itself, not even the scar, but what comes after, the way Victor interprets what has happened to him. He does not think, I made a mistake and I should learn from it. He thinks I was marked. Something has been done to him, rather than caused by him. And in that gap between what happened and how he understands what happened, Dr. Doom begins to form. The psychology of this is worth sitting with, because it is not simply arrogance or denial in the conventional sense. Victor has spent his entire life watching terrible things happen to people who did not deserve them. His mother was killed by a deal she made trying to protect others. His father died in a forest trying to keep his son from freezing. A baron declared a healer a murderer because he could not cure the incurable. In a world where that is how things work, the idea that bad outcomes are caused by one's own errors is not obviously the correct framework. The world has been arbitrary and cruel to Victor von Doom from the beginning. One small explosion at university fits neatly into that pre-existing pattern. It was the world, again. Not him. He is not entirely wrong about this, but he is also not entirely right. And the inability to hold both simultaneously, to accept that the error might have been his and that the world is also arbitrary and cruel, is the specific failure that defines the next chapter. He wanders, he travels. This part of the story has a slightly dreamlike quality in the comics because Victor is moving through the world without a fixed direction, which is such a contrast to the controlled, purposeful figure he becomes that it is almost strange to read. He is trying to find something, knowledge or power, or a way to fix the machine, or perhaps just a direction. He is not entirely sure which. He ends up, eventually, on a mountain in Tibet, more or less at the end of whatever he had left to give. He collapses near a monastery. The monks find him. And this is where things get interesting, the Tibetan monastery. Victor collapses outside of is run by monks who are, improbably but perfectly, masters of both mysticism and technology. Both, not one or the other. Both, which, if you think about it, is exactly the combination that would produce the most perfectly suited teachers for Victor Von Doom, and also explains why fate or convenience, or Jack Kirby's storytelling instincts, put him on that particular mountainside. They take him in and nurse him back to health, and then Victor, being Victor, proceeds to learn everything they know. According to the expanded history in the Marvel database, he masters all of their disciplines within 5 years. In 5 years, starting from whatever he had already accumulated, which was already considerable, he surpasses his teachers. The monks, apparently recognizing what they're dealing with, make him their leader, which is either a touching acknowledgement of exceptional ability or the most reasonable possible response to the situation, depending on how you look at it. During this period, he is also monitoring the outside world. He has built a device that lets him track television broadcasts, radio, satellite transmissions, and eventually internet. The account is updated across different eras of comics to include whatever communication technology was current at the time of writing. And at some point during his years with the monks, he reads that his old rival Reed Richards is involved in an experimental space project, a new vessel, a new team, something significant. The account says he grew furious, and I believe it, not because of pure ego, though ego is certainly part of it, more because Reed Richards, the man who told Victor his calculations were wrong, the man who was there when the machine failed and the scar happened, is now doing something new and ambitious and successful seeming. While Victor is on a mountain having nightmares, the nightmares are actually a significant detail. He has been having them throughout this period. Not specified exactly as what, but the implication is the weight of everything. Cynthia, Werner, the scar, the failure, the whole accumulated grief of his particular life. One of the reasons he decides to build the armour is to stop feeling them. Think about that for a moment. The armour is not just practical protection. It is not just a weapon platform or a symbol of authority. It is, in its original conception, something Victor builds so that he can sleep at night without the past getting in. He designs the armour himself, of course, with the monks' help in construction, but the design is entirely his. The metal, the mechanisms, the green cloak that gets attached. And then he does something that has been discussed and debated in comics lore for decades. He puts the mask on his face before it has finished cooling. The mask, the iron face, is placed against his skin while the metal is still hot. This moment has different interpretations depending on who is writing it and when. Some writers suggest it was deliberate self-punishment. Others suggest it was impatience. Victor simply could not wait and did not think the heat would matter as much as it did. John Byrne, whose 1980s run on Fantastic Four is widely considered definitive, wrote explicitly that Doom's face was truly ravaged by this moment, far beyond the original tiny scar. Byrne's position is that the disfigurement is real and severe, which changes the psychological calculus considerably. Other writers have suggested the original Scar was always worse than Victor admitted, that his vanity prevented him from seeing it clearly. What all of them agree on is this: whatever state his face was in when he put that mask on, it was worse afterward. And he sealed it inside iron and kept it there. He insists the monks address him, from that moment forward, as Dr. Doom. Not Victor, not Von Doom, Dr. Doom. The name is a declaration. It is also the moment a human being becomes a title, and I find that slightly melancholy in a way that I do not think Victor intended it to be. And then he goes back to Latveria. The return is not quiet. Victor has spent years preparing for it, building an army of robots, studying everything he could learn about the current state of the country, developing a plan that is both military and theatrical, because Doom has always understood that power needs to be visible to be effective. He sends a messenger to Baron Vladimir. It is King Vladimir now, the political situation having evolved slightly in Victor's absence, with a holographic projection of himself and an ultimatum: surrender and live, or fight and die. The projector technology is both genuinely impressive and a very Doom move. He could have simply showed up. Instead, he sends a recorded version of himself to deliver the ultimatum while he prepares, because efficiency and drama are not mutually exclusive in his worldview. Vladimir refuses, which is in fairness the wrong call, but also the only call a man like Vladimir can make, because accepting Doom's terms means admitting that the man he persecuted and whose father he as good as murdered has grown into something he cannot stop. Pride once again, being the engine of catastrophe. Doom's rebellion forces, backed by the robots he has built, move through Latveria's defences with something that sounds almost inevitable in the accounts. More and more of Vladimir's own soldiers stop fighting. They look at what is coming and make the practical calculation. When Doom enters the capital, the remaining soldiers depart rather than stand in the way. Vladimir attempts to flee through a secret tunnel beneath a cathedral. Doom finds him. The details of what happens to Vladimir vary across tellings, but the outcome is consistent. Victor von Doom, child of a Romani camp, orphan of the Baron's particular brand of cruelty, takes the throne. He is the king of Latveria. He renames his birth town Doomstadt. He rules from the castle where his father was declared a murderer and sentenced to death. Something that comes up in some accounts about the early period of Doom's rule, and I find it particularly telling, is that he does not immediately set about conquering neighbours or building weapons of mass destruction or making grandiose speeches about world domination. The first years are largely spent on Latveria itself, the infrastructure, the governance, the specific problems of a small country that has been mismanaged by an aristocrat for generations. Doom applies himself to these problems with the same focus he applies to everything else. Roads, medicine, security. The Romani clan, who are his people, receive specific protections that did not exist under Vladimir. He is not a generous ruler in the sense of permitting dissent or encouraging independent thought, but he is, in the material sense, considerably more competent than what came before. The world domination ambitions emerge in parallel with this. He is not waiting to stabilise Latveria before pursuing his larger goals. He is doing both simultaneously, because that is simply how Doom operates. The schemes that involve the Fantastic Four, and the power grabs, and the time machine are happening at the same time as the governance of a small country, and both receive his full attention, because his capacity for focused work is, like most things about him, somewhat beyond the ordinary. Valeria, his childhood love from the Romani camp, comes to see him during this period. She is horrified by what she finds. She speaks against what he has become. Doom has her removed from his presence. She disappears from the story for a long time. Her absence is one of those quiet wounds that the character carries without acknowledging. The thing worth sitting with as we move into the Latveria that Doom builds is this. He came home to free his people from an oppressor. He succeeded, and in doing so, he installed himself as their ruler with absolute authority, with no mechanism for challenge or dissent, with the understanding that his rule is right and correct, and that anyone who disagrees is simply wrong. He is in many specific ways a different kind of ruler than Vladimir, but the structure of the thing, one man's absolute power over a small country, is not different at all. Doom knows this, I think. He just believes that the difference in the man makes all the difference. He is not wrong that there is a difference. Whether that difference is sufficient is the question the comics have been asking for 60 years. One of the more interesting things about Doom as a character is that his country is, depending on the writer and the era, genuinely complicated to evaluate. This is not common in superhero comics. Usually, the villain's domain is straightforwardly terrible. Dark factories, suffering citizens, obvious misery that justifies whatever the hero is about to do to stop it. Latveria under Doom is not that simple, and I find that much more interesting to think about. The general picture that emerges across most consistent accounts is something like this. The citizens of Latveria are, materially speaking, not badly off. There is infrastructure. There is food. There is healthcare of a sort. Doom's scientific capabilities are applied to the country's needs as he sees fit. Crime is essentially non-existent, which sounds appealing until you consider that the reason crime is non-existent is because the response to crime is immediate and not gentle. There is no poverty in any recognizable sense. There is also no dissent, or at least no effective dissent, because the surveillance apparatus Doom maintains means that dissent is known about before it becomes organized. The citizens do not seem to hate him. This is the part that complicates things for outside observers, including the heroes, who occasionally try to liberate the Latverians from their monarch and find the Latverians somewhat ungrateful about it. The people have been protected. They have been fed. They have been insulated from the chaos of a world full of Thanos invasions and Skrull attacks and whatever else is currently menacing the planet. Doom has, from his perspective, kept them safe. He also has absolute authority over every aspect of their lives. Those two things coexist in Latveria without resolving. What is clearly genuine, and I think this is crucial to understanding Doom, is that his care for the Latverians is real. It is not performed for optics. He is not a tyrant who pretends to care about his people while privately treating them as a resource. He actually considers himself their protector in a way that has emotional content. When Latveria is threatened by invasion, by political destabilization, by anyone who decides they can take something from it, Doom's response is not the calculated response of a ruler protecting an asset. It is the response of someone who is furious that someone has touched what is his to protect. The Romani heritage matters here, and it is not talked about enough. Doom identifies as Roma throughout his comics history. He is proud of it, he helps his people when he can, he carries that identity even under the armour. The country he rules was the country that persecuted his clan. The throne he sits on was built by a man who killed his father. Taking it and making it into something decent, or his version of decent, is not purely about power. There is something old and personal in it. Now, Boris is one of those supporting characters who does not get nearly enough attention given how important he is to the emotional architecture of the character. He is a Latverian man who is Werner von Doom's best friend. Werner, dying in that forest, made Boris promise to take care of Victor. Boris kept that promise. He has been in Victor's life since serving at the castle, and what he represents is something that Doom almost never has: genuine, uncomplicated affection from someone who knew him before the armour. Boris loves Victor in a way that is entirely unconditioned by fear or respect or the calculations that govern everyone else's relationship with Doom. He simply loves him, the way someone loves a child they promise to look after. Doom allows this. He does not perform warmth in return, that is not his register, but Boris exists in his orbit as a protected constant, and the fact that Doom protects that says something. Then there are the Doom bots. The Doom bots are an army of robotic replicas of Dr. Doom, built to serve various purposes. Some defend Latveria, some carry out missions, some stand in for Doom in situations where Doom would rather not be present, and some are deployed in combat situations where there is a meaningful chance they will be destroyed. The practical applications are obvious. The psychological dimension is interesting. There is something very specific about a man who has sealed his actual face inside iron and then populates the world with identical iron faces on robots. Every room potentially has a Doom in it. Every engagement might be the real one, or might be a copy. The Fantastic Four, to their continual frustration, have defeated Doom on many occasions and then been informed, either by Doom himself or by the aftermath, that they had in fact defeated a robot. The frequency with which this happens across 6 decades of comics is genuinely funny in a dry kind of way. There is one issue. I'm not going to pretend I remember which number it is, but it is somewhere in the Byrne era where the Fantastic Four defeat what they believe is Doom and are rather pleased with themselves, and then the actual Doom arrives, surveys the wreckage of the Doombot, and says something to the effect of, "Doom does not congratulate you, that robot served its purpose," and then leaves. The robot's purpose was apparently to occupy the Fantastic Four for the duration of whatever Doom was doing elsewhere. The robot was the distraction. The Fantastic Four were the distraction's audience. They had been acting in a play they did not know they were in, for the benefit of an author who was not present. But it also means that Doom is almost never truly where he appears to be. The physical presence of Dr. Doom, the man inside the armour, is a kind of permanent uncertainty. You cannot be sure you're dealing with him. You cannot be sure he cares what you're doing to what appears to be him. He has made himself into a figure rather than a person, and the Doombots are the full technical expression of that. The genius, and it is genuine genius, not just in the comic book sense of he builds impressive things, but in a more conceptual sense, is that Doom has made his country into an extension of himself. Latveria runs on his systems, his infrastructure, his technological architecture. The Doombots patrol its borders. His face is everywhere. The citizens' safety depends entirely on his continued existence and his continued willingness to protect them, which means the country's stability is tied to the stability of one man who is also one of the primary targets of every significant threat in the Marvel Universe. It is, when you step back, an extraordinarily fragile system, held together entirely by the fact that Doom has not yet lost. And yet, and this is the counter-argument that the comics occasionally allow, it has also held together considerably longer than many alternatives would have. Latveria has survived invasions that destroyed larger and better defended countries. It has survived the Skrull occupation, the machinations of various would-be conquerors, and the general chaos of a Marvel universe, where civilization is regularly threatened by things like purple men, with gauntlets full of magic stones. Doom's country endures. That endurance is not nothing, even if the cost of it is what it is. There is also the question of what Doom actually does with the resources of a nation-state and a genius-level intellect applied to its governance. The technology level of Latveria under Doom's administration is considerably above what you would expect from a small Eastern European country. Medical technology, infrastructure, defensive systems that make Latveria one of the most difficult countries in the world to invade successfully, which has been tested multiple times and found to be accurate. Doom genuinely applies himself to the problem of governing well, by his own definition of well, and the output of that application is visible in the country he produces. Whether this makes him a good ruler or simply a competent tyrant is the argument that has never been resolved. The comics do not resolve it either, which is probably the correct choice. The answer depends on what you weight most heavily in the evaluation. material well-being, political freedom, long-term security, the dignity of being governed without absolute subjugation. And Doom would argue, without any particular self-awareness, that he is the right person to determine the correct weighting. This is circular, obviously. It is also completely consistent with who he is. Fantastic Four number 5, April 1962. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby have, at this point, already introduced the team themselves, established their dynamic, given them their rogues gallery of early villains, and now they are introducing what will become the definitive antagonist of the entire series. And the choice they make, the specific story they tell, is about time travel and piracy. Doom, as I mentioned at the start, arrives with zero origin, zero build-up, and zero concern about whether the reader knows who he is yet. He simply appears, already in control of the situation, already several steps ahead of everyone around him, and immediately sets about using the Fantastic Four to retrieve a chest of gems that once belonged to Blackbeard the pirate. He needs the gems. The FF are useful instruments for obtaining them. This is how Doom thinks about other people in his early appearances, as means to ends when he thinks about them at all. There is something marvellous about the confidence of this debut. A lot of characters, villains especially, are introduced through the process of being defeated. They appear, they threaten, they lose, and through that loss the hero is established as capable. Doom does not lose in his first appearance. He is outmaneuvered by a technicality involving which chest contained the actual gems, and he is furious about it, but he departs on his own terms. It is the pattern he holds to across decades. Doom does not really lose so much as he periodically runs out of time. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, interestingly, did not give him an origin story for another 2 years. He appears consistently across issues of Fantastic Four throughout 1962 and 1963. Schemes involving the Submariner, various power struggles, time manipulation, and all of this happens without the reader knowing anything about who Victor Von Doom was before the armour. The origin, when it finally comes in Fantastic Four Annual No. 2 in 1964, adds depth without changing the fundamental impression. The character was formed before the backstory was provided. Lee and Kirby were confident enough in the armour, the voice, the attitude, that they did not feel the need to explain him immediately. That is, when you think about it, how Doom would prefer it. He does not explain himself. He does not justify, he simply is, and you adjust to that. The rivalry with Reed Richards that I described in the university section becomes, in the Fantastic Four comics, one of the defining tensions in the whole series. It is technically about power and domination. Doom wants to conquer things. Reed and the team stop him, but underneath that, it is profoundly personal. Doom considers Reed to be, in some sense, his. The fact that Reed exists as a successful, admired, loved genius who did not have Doom's particular experiences and does not carry Doom's particular weight is a perpetual offence, not because Doom wants what Reed has exactly, more because Reed's existence is a constant implicit argument that things could have gone differently, and Doom has absolutely no interest in entertaining that argument. Reed, for his part, has a complicated relationship with the hatred Doom directs at him. He understands the source of it, he is brilliant enough to understand it, and humane enough to feel something about it. And he never quite gives up on the idea that there is a version of events where he and Victor are not enemies. This is occasionally maddening for everyone around Reed and occasionally correct, which is its own kind of frustrating. John Byrne's run on Fantastic Four, which began in 1981 and lasted roughly 6 years, is the era that most people who discuss Doom seriously point to as the height of the character's early development. Byrne had read every issue that came before, everyone, which is commitment, and approached Doom with the specific intention of adding genuine moral complexity to someone who had been, in his earlier appearances, more of a theatrical tyrant than a fully realised person. Byrne's Doom still wants to rule the world. He is not reformed, he is not softened. But Byrne writes him as someone whose governance of Latveria has a genuine internal logic, not good by the standards of liberal democracy, but coherent. The people are protected. The infrastructure functions. The country is, within the constraints of absolute authoritarian rule, managed. And Doom believes absolutely that he is the best possible administrator of the one thing he governs, and that the reason he does not govern more is simply that the world has not yet been sensible enough to allow it. There is a John Byrne issue where the Fantastic Four essentially invade Latveria to try and stop one of Doom's schemes, and the Latverian citizenry are not grateful. They protect their king. They see the Fantastic Four as the aggressors, and Byrne plays this entirely straight. He does not frame it as the citizens being brainwashed or too afraid to resist. Some of them just actually prefer Doom to the alternative, which is more complex than most superhero comics were willing to be about villains in 1981. Some of the early years' schemes are worth just listing briefly because they are genuinely extraordinary in their scope and their occasional absurdity. Doom has, at various points, stolen the Silver Surfer's power cosmic and briefly become one of the most powerful beings on Earth. He has enslaved Namor the Submariner, which is an impressive achievement given that Namor is an extremely proud man who does not enslave easily. He has sent various heroes into the past, the future, and other dimensions. He has attempted to hold the planet for ransom on multiple occasions. He once exchanged bodies with Reed Richards, actually switched consciousnesses, inhabiting each other's physical form, which is the kind of scheme that requires a specific type of confidence in one's own ability to function in any body. The body-swapping one is interesting because it reveals something. Doom, even as Reed Richards, maintains what he considers to be his superiority. He does not struggle to inhabit another identity. He is Dr. Doom, regardless of which face he is wearing, and the face under the iron mask is, in his understanding of himself, essentially irrelevant. The Silver Surfer moment is worth dwelling on a bit longer. Doom, at the height of the power cosmic, which is roughly as powerful as any being in the Marvel Universe can be, the same energy that powers Galacta, is briefly functioning as a god. He can do almost anything. What he does with this is go after the Fantastic Four and try to conquer Earth. He does not become enlightened. He does not have a change of heart. He does not have a second thought about whether world domination is actually what he wants now, that he has the means to achieve it cleanly. He just does the thing he was always going to do, with more power, and he loses anyway. Not because he is defeated in direct combat, the power cosmic makes that effectively impossible, but because the power does not cooperate with his will the way his own formidable intellect and sorcery do. It is not his, and it resists being fully controlled. He eventually has to give it up. This pattern, Doom reaching for the biggest possible power, briefly holding it, and then losing it to some combination of pride in the fundamental incompatibility between infinite power and individual will, is something we will see again, several times, including one instance where the power in question is genuinely the power of a god. But that comes much later. For now, in the early years, Doom is establishing himself as the Fantastic Four's definitive nemesis, the constant returning threat that never quite stops and never quite succeeds. He is, from the Fantastic Four's perspective, exhausting and terrifying in roughly equal measure. From Doom's perspective, they are a perpetual minor inconvenience in the broader project of eventually getting what he wants. One thing worth noting about the early Lee Kirby run specifically is the way Doom was written as someone with genuine gravitas in scenes that could easily have played as camp. There are issues where Doom is monologuing at length in the purple prose of 1960s comics dialogue about his plans and his superiority and his destiny, and it lands because the underlying character work supports it. You believe that this person believes what he is saying, which is the minimum requirement for a villain who speaks the way Doom speaks. Kirby's visual design helps enormously. The armor is imposing in a way that feels genuinely medieval, not sci-fi chrome, not fantasy robes, but something that looks like it was made by hand by someone who wanted to be both king and knight simultaneously. The green cloak against the metal is a design decision that should not work as well as it does. Also worth noting about the early years, the Doom of this period is slightly more impulsive than the careful, strategic figure he later becomes. He schemes in ways that do not always have obvious exits if things go wrong. He makes decisions based partly on rage, the rage at Reed specifically, the rage at being dismissed or underestimated, in ways that more considered Doom would not. The character matures across the Fantastic Four run, not in a redemption sense, but in the sense that he becomes more precise. Younger Doom is angrier, later Doom is colder, and colder is usually more effective. He has time. He always has time. He has a time machine. The thing that makes Doctor Doom genuinely unusual in the Marvel Universe, more unusual, I would argue, than any single power or ability he possesses, is the combination. Because Marvel is full of brilliant scientists. It has Tony Stark, Reed Richards, Bruce Banner, Hank Pym, Shuri, Peter Parker at a stretch. And it is full of powerful sorcerers, Doctor Strange at the top, Morgan Le Fay, Wanda Maximoff, various others across the magical side of the canon. But the number of characters who are legitimately elite in both science and sorcery is essentially one. Victor Von Doom. It is worth being specific about what elite means here, because sometimes in comics, writing things get vague about power levels. Doctor Strange has described Doom's sorcery as impressive, which from Strange is not faint praise. Strange does not give compliments easily, and he has a fairly precise internal ranking of magical ability that he rarely shares, but sometimes lets slip. Doom has performed mystical feats that require genuine mastery. He has navigated Mephisto's realm. He has worked with Morgan Le Fay on projects that would challenge most sorcerers. He has cast spells of a scale and precision that take decades of study. His magical library is one of the most comprehensive in the world. The science side is, if anything, more thoroughly documented because it produces things you can look at. He has built a functional time machine, which he calls a time platform, as if it is something you would find in an airport, and used it repeatedly across different eras of stories. He has crossed into other dimensions through technological means. He has built an army of robots sophisticated enough to pass for him at close range. He has constructed devices to monitor global communications. He has, on multiple occasions, built or modified weapons capable of threatening beings who operate on a cosmic scale. Reed Richards is generally cited as the more purely brilliant scientist, the more innovative, the more theoretically radical thinker. Doom does not really accept this assessment, and to be fair to him, it is based on the observable outputs rather than any definitive measure of underlying capability. Doom's science is applied toward his specific ends, which are sometimes different from Reed's, and that makes direct comparison difficult. What is clear is that Doom's scientific capability, in isolation from everything else he is, would make him one of the most dangerous people in the world. Combined with equivalent sorcery, he is genuinely in a different category. The comparison between Doom and Reed is one of those conversations that comic book readers have been having for 60 years without reaching a consensus. And I think the reason it never resolves is that the two men are measuring different things. Reed's science is exploratory. He follows curiosity, he investigates phenomena, he builds things to understand them, and then adapts when understanding produces surprises. There is an openness to Reed's scientific practice that produces genuine breakthroughs, including some that Reed himself did not anticipate or fully understand in the moment. His elasticity is not just physical, it is epistemic. He bends toward new information. Doom's science is, in a sense, more purposeful, and in another sense, less flexible. He defines the problem first, then builds the solution. The time platform was not a byproduct of curiosity, about temporal mechanics. It was built because Doom decided he needed to travel in time, and so he constructed the means to do it. This produces extraordinary results when Doom's definition of the problem is correct. It produces occasional spectacular failures when his definition of the problem is slightly wrong, because the whole structure is built on that initial framing, and if the framing has a flaw, the flaw is foundational rather than correctable on the fly. The scar is, in this reading, the purest possible example of how that specific failure mode works. He defined the problem, contacted Cynthia's spirit, built a solution, and when the solution failed, he refused to accept that the failure originated in his own work. That refusal is the root of everything. Not the accident, not the scar, not even the expulsion. The refusal to update the model. The armor deserves its own consideration because it has evolved significantly over 60 years. The core design, metal covering everything, the face mask, the green cloak, has remained constant, but the specifics have been upgraded continuously. The current armor is essentially a one-man weapons platform. Energy blasters, force fields, jet propulsion, various defensive systems that activate contextually, mechanisms for interfacing with his robot army, and a degree of physical enhancement that makes him considerably stronger and more durable than an unarmored human. It can also be controlled remotely, and it can operate independently if necessary. The armor is, in certain situations, a Doom bot without the bot. Doom presence without Doom. The Doom bots, the standing army of robot copies covered in the Latveria section, are the distributed version of this same principle. The armor philosophy scaled outward across a whole fleet of identical faces. The intellect itself, separate from the armor and the magic and the robots, is arguably the real weapon. The armor and the sorcery are tools. The intellect is what decides how and when those tools are used, what plans they execute, what contingencies they serve. Doom is not a reactive thinker. He is always several moves ahead. Not in the flashy, explicitly stated to the audience way that some comic book geniuses are written. The I planned for this exact scenario 14 issues ago kind of thing, but in a more organic sense. He considers possibilities. He builds contingencies into his plans. He does not tend to be surprised, and when he is surprised, he adapts quickly and without visible distress. One more dimension of the armor worth mentioning, and I will keep this brief because it is the kind of observation that quickly becomes overworked, is that protection and isolation are the same thing here. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. The man inside is sealed away from touch, from physical vulnerability, from anything the world might do to his actual skin. That is useful. It is also a fairly precise description of someone who decided the safest possible state is to be unreachable. The scar is under there. The grief is under there. Werner dying in the snow is under there. And the iron face looks out at the world and does not flinch because it cannot flinch, because that is what iron does. One more thing about the powers that is worth spending a moment on, because it gets overlooked in favour of the more dramatic stuff. Doom's relationship with time travel. He built a time machine. He calls it a time platform, which is such an aggressively understated name for something that can deposit you in any point in human history. He has used it to retrieve things, to gain information, to rewrite situations that went against him, and occasionally to make problems for the Fantastic Four that they will only understand several decades later. The time platform is partly a practical tool and partly a philosophical statement. The dimension of when is not a constraint Doom operates under if he decides it should not be. Most characters with access to time travel use it carefully, aware that changing the past creates complicated consequences. Doom uses it with the confidence of someone who believes he can manage whatever consequences arise, because he is the one who will be managing them. This is, on reflection, either very clever or the most overconfident thing imaginable, and with Doom it is probably both simultaneously. There is also his mastery of specific magical disciplines that tend not to come up in the highlights reel version of his abilities. He has worked extensively with golem creation, the construction of artificial life, which bridges his scientific and mystical practices in interesting ways. He has performed rituals that require knowledge of demonic pacts and celestial mechanics simultaneously. He maintains what is described as one of the most comprehensive libraries of magical texts on Earth, which he has actually read and learnt from rather than simply collected. The library is not decoration, it is infrastructure. The dimensional crossing capability is one of those things that sounds like a minor technical note, and is actually quite significant when you consider what it means in practice. Doom has crossed into other planes of existence, not just Mephisto's realm, though that is the most famous example, through a combination of technological and mystical means that essentially makes the boundaries between dimensions optional for him. This matters because a large portion of Marvel's most serious threats originate from other dimensions: the dark dimension, the negative zone, the realm of the Beyonders. Doom has access to all of these in ways that most heroes and villains do not. His threat range, in a sense, extends beyond Earth and beyond the conventional universe into the structural architecture of existence itself. Future Doom, in various alternate universe storylines, has effectively become something like a dimensional constant, a figure so embedded in the fabric of multiple realities that his presence is detectable across timelines. This is partly a consequence of his time travel history, where he has visited enough different periods that his particular temporal signature is spread through a wide enough range of history to be more or less permanent. It is also partly a consequence of the scale of the Battleworld episode, where he was briefly god of a constructed reality, and that fact left traces. Future Doom is always a slightly different problem from present Doom because the accumulated weight of all the things he has done and will do exists around him in a way that ordinary characters do not have. One thing I find genuinely interesting, and that tends not to come up in discussions of Doom's abilities, is the specific way his science and sorcery interact rather than simply coexist. They are not parallel skill sets that he deploys separately depending on the situation. They inform each other. His scientific understanding of energy and matter makes his magical workings more precise, because he approaches spell construction with the same rigor he would apply to engineering a device, testing, iterating, accounting for failure modes. And his magical understanding of the underlying structure of reality makes his science more audacious because he knows that the laws of physics, as ordinarily understood, are not actually the ceiling. He has seen what is on the other side of those laws. He knows there is another side. Reed Richards, by contrast, operates entirely within scientific frameworks and is occasionally surprised by the existence of things that do not fit them. Doom is never surprised by things that do not fit the conventional framework because he has a second framework running in parallel that accounts for them. It is, when you think about it, a genuine structural advantage, not just twice as many tools, but twice as many models of how reality works, and the ability to switch between them or combine them as the situation requires. In 1989, Marvel published a graphic novel called Triumph and Torment. It is written by Roger Stern and illustrated by Mike Mignola, who is probably best known now as the creator of Hellboy, but whose work here is extraordinary in a different register. Dark, architecturally detailed, expressionistic in a way that suits the material perfectly. I think Triumph and Torment is one of the finest pieces of storytelling Marvel has ever produced, and I say that as someone who has read quite a lot of what they have produced over 60 years. The premise is as follows. There is a sorcery tournament, a formal competition among the magical practitioners of the Marvel Universe, the kind of event that happens in comics in much the same way that academic conferences happen in real life, except with more reality reshaping power at stake. Dr. Doom enters this tournament and wins it, not through trickery, not through cheating, not by deploying his technological advantages in an unfair way. He wins it on magical merit because he is that good. The prize for winning the tournament is that the second place finisher owes the winner a service, a favour essentially, though at the scale of sorcery a favour can mean quite a lot. The runner-up, who loses to Doom, is Dr. Stephen Strange. What Doom asks of Strange is this: accompany me to Mephisto's realm. Help me rescue my mother's soul. That is the whole plot. Doom wants to go to hell and bring Cynthia out. He has wanted this since he was a child. He built the machine at university to attempt it through scientific means. The machine failed. He has spent decades building himself into someone who might actually succeed by other means. And now he has Strange's abilities at his disposal as well, and he is going to try. The journey into Mephisto's realm is the kind of thing that sounds like it should be a massive action sequence, and instead is something quieter and stranger. Mephisto is a very specific kind of antagonist. He does not simply fight you, because he is not primarily a fighter. He manipulates. He offers things. He makes the terrain of his realm into a psychological obstacle course. He is interested in corrupting souls, not destroying them, because destroyed souls are no use to him. Mephisto's interest in Doom is particular and long-standing. He has had Cynthia's soul in his possession since Victor was 4 years old. He is aware that Doom wants her back and has taken a certain pleasure over the decades in that being the case. Having Doom want something that Mephisto possesses, and possessing it indefinitely, is a better outcome for Mephisto than simply releasing it would be. The wanting is the point. What makes Triumph and Torment remarkable, and what makes it the essential Doom story for understanding the character, is the way Doom navigates this situation. He does not batter his way through. He does not outsmart Mephisto in the usual superhero sense of the villain being surprised by a clever plan. He uses his knowledge of how Mephisto operates, the demon's specific vanity, his love of corruption, to engineer a situation where releasing Cynthia costs Mephisto less than keeping her would. Strange is there, and Strange is important to the story. His magic is genuinely necessary for what Doom needs to accomplish, and the dynamic between the two of them is fascinating because they are both proud, brilliant men who do not particularly like each other and who have to cooperate anyway. But this is Doom's story. Strange is there in support of something that is entirely Victor's. When Cynthia is freed, when she ascends in Mignola's extraordinary illustration into whatever is on the other side of Mephisto's realm, Doom allows himself one moment, not a breakdown, not weeping openly, a moment, a single instance of something that is not control. And then it is done. I think this story deserves to be read by anyone who is interested in Doom as a character, because it is the story that most clearly articulates the thing that is underneath everything else. Underneath the world domination and the time travel and the power cosmic and the arguments with Reed Richards and the absolute monarchy and all of it. Underneath all of that is a child who lost his mother when he was 4 years old, who has never stopped trying to get her back, who built himself into the most formidable possible version of himself, partly because the universe that took his mother away needed to be something he could fight. He wins this one. She is free. And then he puts the mask back on and goes back to being Dr. Doom, because that is what he is now. And one victory over Mephisto does not change the other 60 things he needs to do this decade. But he won. He did the thing. The machine that failed at university, the deal Mephisto made with his mother, the frozen forest where Werner died, all of that, and he still got her out. The Mignola artwork in Triumph and Torment deserves a specific mention here because it is doing a lot of the emotional work of the story. Mignola's style, heavy shadows, simplified but expressive figures, architecture that feels ancient and slightly wrong, suits Mephisto's realm in a way that a more conventional superhero art style would not. There are pages in this book where Cynthia's ascent is depicted almost wordlessly, through shape and light and the particular quality of darkness receding, and they are some of the most affecting images in Marvel's catalogue. Good comics writing always accounts for what the art will do, and Stern's script gives Mignola space to do it. The dynamic between Doom and Strange throughout the journey is also worth appreciating on its own terms. These are two enormously proud men with very different approaches to sorcery. Strange is trained in a tradition, shaped by the Ancient One's specific philosophy, operating within an ethical framework that Doom does not share. Doom has no tradition. He taught himself, he surpassed monks. He raids every available source of mystical knowledge without particularly caring where it comes from or what its original practitioners intended. They are incompatible in almost every way. They cooperate anyway because the task is bigger than the incompatibility, and because each one recognizes in the other someone who actually knows what they're doing. That mutual recognition is quiet and unspoken, and it is more than most of Doom's relationships ever manage. That is the thing to hold on to when Doom does something in a later story that makes you want to roll your eyes at him. Somewhere in there, the kid from the Romani camp is still trying. There is a recurring dynamic in Dr. Doom's history that you notice once you see it and cannot stop noticing. Doom reaches for the biggest possible power available to him in a given era, acquires it, and then discovers that even cosmic scale power does not quite do what he needs it to do. Not because the power is insufficient, because Doom is, ultimately, a human being with human motivations. An infinite power has a strange way of not resolving the things that actually drive him. We covered the Silver Surfer incident already. Doom absorbs the power cosmic, briefly becomes one of the most powerful beings on Earth, and still just tries to do what he was already going to do. The power does not change him. It does not enlighten him or broaden his ambitions or prompt any philosophical recalibration. He is Doom with more energy, and then he loses the energy because it does not fit him, and he moves on. That pattern is the thing. It repeats. The Galactus situation is where the pattern gets genuinely interesting, because Galactus is not something you can even apply the pattern to in the conventional sense. Doom and Galactus have their own history across the decades, and it raises a question that Doom finds somewhat personally offensive. What do you do with something that cannot be beaten at all? Galactus is not a powerful enemy. He is a fundamental force. He consumes planets because consuming planets is what he does, the way a star burns hydrogen. You cannot outmaneuver the sun. Doom's encounters with Galactus tend to involve working around this problem rather than through it, which is about the most intellectually honest adaptation Doom ever makes to a situation he cannot control. The MCU Fantastic Four film depicts this directly. Galactus arriving to consume Earth, Reed developing a plan to simply move the planet to another solar system rather than fight. That is the kind of lateral thinking Doom respects, incidentally, even from Reed. Audacious, technically extraordinary, solving the problem by reframing it entirely. The MCU version of Doom appearing at the Baxter Building to look at Franklin Richards in the film's final scene implies he has already been thinking about Galactus and what comes next for quite some time. His relationship with Thanos is interesting for different reasons. Both are extraordinarily powerful, both believe they operate on a level above ordinary beings, and both are, in very different ways, motivated by something personal underneath the cosmic ambition. With Thanos, it is grief transmuted into philosophy, roughly speaking. With Doom, it is, as we have established, considerably more specific. They have clashed, they have occasionally been on the same side against a mutual threat, and there is always a particular tension in those encounters, because neither will ever entirely accept that the other is operating at a comparable level. What makes that tension productive, dramatically, is that the two characters' approaches to power are almost perfectly inverted. Thanos wants to prove something about existence itself, the nature of life and death and balance, the cosmic scale argument he has convinced himself he is making. Doom's goals are considerably less abstract. He wants to govern. He wants to protect his people, defeat his enemies, and prove that his way of doing things is correct. The scope is enormous. World domination, eventually everything. But the motivation is human, in a way that Thanos' never quite is. Doom would not destroy half the universe. There would be nobody left to appreciate that he was in charge. The Infinity Gauntlet event, which brought together most of Marvel's characters, is one of those occasions where the threat is simply so vast that Doom participates in opposition to it, alongside heroes he would normally be opposing. This is a pattern that repeats when the stakes are planetary or universal. Doom tends to appear on the side of Earth's survival, not because he has changed his worldview, but because a conquered Earth is less useful to him than a functioning one. His ambition requires there to be something to rule. There is a moment in the original Infinity Gauntlet storyline where Doom briefly manages to get his hands on the gauntlet itself, in the chaos of the climactic confrontation. It lasts only seconds before he is stripped of it. But the brief window where Dr. Doom holds the Infinity Gauntlet, absolute power over reality, time, space, mind, soul, and power themselves. And what he does in those seconds is, in its way, very Doom. He does not hesitate. He does not suddenly decide to use it to be generous. He immediately attempts to consolidate the power permanently. The failure is quick and total. The attempt was never in question. But the really extraordinary power grab, the one that makes all of these earlier acquisitions look like practice runs, comes in 2015, and it involves the Beyonders, who are the kind of cosmic entity that makes Galactus look like a local concern. We are going to get to that in a bit. Before we do though, there is a story from 1989 that needs to be in the record, which we have just covered. Right, Triumph and Torment, done. So let us talk about Secret Wars. Jonathan Hickman had been building towards Secret Wars for years. His run on Avengers and New Avengers, which preceded it, is one of the most elaborate pieces of world building in recent Marvel history. Years of storylines about the Illuminati, about incursions, about the fundamental fragility of the multiverse. If you have not read it and you have the patience for dense, slow-burning cosmic narratives, it is extraordinarily good. If you want the short version, the multiverse was dying. Universes were collapsing into each other. Every time two universes touched, they destroyed each other. The heroes tried everything they could think of. It did not work. What happened at the end of it, the moment that led into Secret Wars involved Doom, Reed Richards, and Thor absorbing the power of the Beyonders. The Beyonders are above Galactus in the cosmic hierarchy in the same way that Galactus is above ordinary mortals. They are not physical beings in any conventional sense. They had, for reasons that the story makes genuinely compelling, decided to end the multiverse entirely. As an experiment, they were just going to see what happened if they destroyed everything. Doom, Reed and Thor stand together and attempt to absorb that power. They succeed, partly. What Doom takes from that moment is enough to, when the final collapse comes, reshape the wreckage of multiple destroyed universes into something new. Battleworld. Doom becomes the god of Battleworld. Not the ruler, not the king, the god. He is literally the deity of this place. There is a religion built around him. People pray to Doom. His face is on the sun. Not as a symbol, the sun is shaped like Doom's face, which is either the most Doom thing he has ever done, or the second most Doom thing after the name. The hierarchy of Battleworld is governed by his will absolutely. He has a Thor core, an army of Thors, people who have been made worthy and serve as his divine enforcers. He has a wife, or several, across different domains. He has reshaped the fundamental architecture of reality to suit his preferences. The specific domains of Battleworld, which the 2015 event spent considerable time mapping out, are a particular kind of Marvel fan pleasure, each one a fragment of a different universe or timeline, each with its own flavour. There is a domain that is essentially 1602 Elizabethan-era Marvel. There is a domain that is the Marvel Zombies reality. There is a domain called Egyptia, which is what it sounds like. There is a domain called Arcadia, where the female heroes of various universes have built something resembling a matriarchal society. Doom did not design these domains so much as construct a structure around what survived from the destruction and decide how they would relate to each other. The resulting geography of Battleworld is deeply strange, and also, when you spend time with it, kind of wonderful. The most elaborate piece of world-building Marvel had produced in decades. Doom governs all of it with absolute authority and very little visible joy. This is the thing Doom has always wanted. Not world domination in the minor league sense of controlling Earth's governments and directing human history. Actual godhood, actual absolute creative authority over existence itself. And Battleworld, for a time, is something. It is not nothing. It functions. The various domains, each a fragment of a destroyed universe, populated by whoever survived from that universe, have internal coherence. Doom keeps them from destroying each other, mostly. He maintains a kind of order. He has, in his way, done exactly what he always said he would do, created a world where the hard decisions are made by a single person who is above corruption and above petty desire. But, here is the but, and the but is what makes Secret Wars the most honest thing Marvel has ever done with this character. The but is that Doom, as God Emperor, is not happy. He is not satisfied. He has everything he wanted, and it is not enough. The challenge of achieving absolute power disappears the moment absolute power is achieved. And Doom is fundamentally a person who needs opposition, who needs a problem to solve, who is animated by struggle. Without struggle, without the Fantastic Four or Thanos or some cosmic threat or the daily difficulty of governing Latveria against all the forces trying to destabilize it, there is nothing to push against. And a man like Doom without something to push against is a man who is simply filling time. Reed Richards arrives. There is eventually a confrontation between them. The genuine Reed Richards from the destroyed universe, not some Battleworld variant. And it is the confrontation that the entire decades-long rivalry has been building toward, even if neither of them could have predicted the form it would take. Reed gets the power. At the climactic moment, Doom cedes the Beyonder's power to Reed. There are details about how this happens, involving their respective relationships with the children of the Fantastic Four and various other story mechanics. And Reed Richards uses it to restore the multiverse, properly. Not a Battleworld patchwork, but the actual multiverse returned to something like it was. Before Doom gives it up, Reed asks him what he would do with that power. What would Doom make, given everything he wants and the ability to make it real? And Doom says, this. He gestures at what he has built, but the way he says it, and the context around it, and what Hickman has been building across years of story, makes clear that what Doom actually wants, at the deepest, least defended level of what he wants, is for the specific bad things that happened to not have happened. For Cynthia to have lived. For Werner not to have frozen in the forest. For the machine at university to have worked. For the scar not to have happened. For Reed Richards to be his friend and colleague rather than his rival, and his constant implicit accusation that things could have been fine. Reed Richards, using the power that Doom gives him, makes a world where Doom has what he actually wanted, a life where things went differently, a family, children who are healthy, a version of existence where Victor Von Doom is simply a man living a life, rather than a concept sealed inside iron. And then Doom concedes, explicitly and without much fanfare, that Reed is the better man. He just says it. He says it plainly. After 60 years of rivalry and hatred and schemes and combat and body swapping and time travel and all of it, Doom looks at Reed Richards and says, yes, you are better. Not at everything, not at science or sorcery, better in the sense that actually matters. The way a person is better when they're capable of loving without it becoming possession, when they can be brilliant without it requiring other people to be lesser, when their particular talents coexist with their particular humanity rather than being perpetually in tension with it. It is one of the most remarkable moments in Marvel Comics, and it earns its weight because of everything that had to happen first. There is a smaller detail in Secret Wars that I want to spend a moment on because it quietly tells you everything. Doom, as God Emperor, has raised Franklin and Valeria Richards, Reed and Sue's children, as his own. They are not his biological children, but in Battleworld, they are his. He has given them his name. He has ensured that they are safe and healthy and provided for. Franklin's power, which operates at a cosmically significant level, is managed carefully because Doom manages it carefully. Valeria is brilliant, possibly the most brilliant mind in this constructed reality, and Doom treats her as such rather than diminishing her or using her instrumentally. What this means is that the world Doom built with God power, the first thing he did with infinite creative authority, included making sure that Reed Richards' children were okay. The man he has devoted enormous energy to destroying, whose existence is a perpetual insult to him, whose success has been the measuring stick against which Doom has defined his failure. That man's children are in Doom's house, safe, cared for, educated. You can read that as possessiveness, as claiming Reed's legacy for himself. You can also read it as something simpler. Doom knows what it is to be a child who lost everything, and he did not want those children to lose theirs. Even if the architecture through which he expressed that was an absolute monarchy he had built himself and named after himself with his face on the sun, the feeling underneath it was real. Reed Richards, using the power that Doom gives him, makes a world where Doom has what he actually wanted. A life where things went differently. A family, children who are healthy. A version of existence where Victor Von Doom is simply a man living a life, rather than a concept sealed inside iron. After Secret Wars, the restored universe gives Doom something he has never had before and does not entirely know what to do with. A second chance, not a vague, metaphorical second chance. An actual one. Reed Richards used the power of a god to give Victor Von Doom a life where things went differently, where he has peace, where the weight of Latveria and the mask and all of it is not what defines his days. And then at some point, Victor Von Doom decides not to take it. He comes back. He always comes back. When he resurfaces in the restored Marvel Universe, it is in the context of something genuinely unexpected. Tony Stark has been defeated, seriously, structurally defeated, in the events of Civil War II. He is in a coma. His legacy, his company, his identity as Iron Man are all in a state of suspension. And into that gap, Victor Von Doom decides to step. He becomes Iron Man, the third person to hold the title after Tony and a few interim holders, and he does so in an Iron Man suit that he has redesigned. Because of course he has redesigned it. He would not wear someone else's work unmodified, with a face that is notably unmasked. The Victor Von Doom who takes on the Iron Man mantle is a Victor Von Doom who is showing his face. The scarred, disfigured face that has been hidden behind iron since his time in Tibet. The run by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev, called The Infamous Iron Man, is a genuinely interesting piece of storytelling because it takes seriously the question of what Doom being a hero would actually look like. And the answer, which you could probably have predicted, is still very much Doom. He is not humble, he is not apologetic, he does not second-guess his methods or ask for permission or behave in any of the ways that hero registration and oversight committees would expect a person in this role to behave. He fights villains, he addresses threats, he does what Iron Man does, but he does it with the absolute authority of a man who has ruled a country, wielded godlike power, and still has a dungeon in his castle that he uses for people who particularly disappoint him. The other heroes do not know what to make of him. SHIELD watches him with the specific wariness of an organisation that has catalogued his history and cannot quite believe he has decided to be a protagonist. The Avengers, to varying degrees, range from cautious acceptance to open suspicion. Maria Hill, to her credit, handles the situation with exactly the pragmatic skepticism it deserves. Mephisto is, unsurprisingly, opposed to the whole arrangement. A reformed or reforming Doom is not in Mephisto's interests. The demonic entity has had a long investment in Victor's particular darkness, and watching him attempt to be something other than that is not something Mephisto is going to observe neutrally. There is a thread running through the infamous Iron Man run of Mephisto, actively sabotaging Doom's attempts at heroism, operating through proxies and manipulation, trying to push him back toward what he was. Briefly, during this era, Doom also has a relationship with Amara Pereira, a scientist, someone who sees Victor as a person rather than a title, which is genuinely rare. He has a child with her. The child becomes a target because Doom, having something to lose, is a resource for his enemies. This is the calculation that has always prevented him from allowing himself to have things to lose. And the infamous Iron Man era makes the cost of that calculation visible by briefly making him accept the vulnerability. He does not stay Iron Man. He could not have, really. It is not just about external pressure, though there is plenty of that. It is that Doom wearing Tony Stark's name and Tony Stark's legacy, even redesigned and made his own, is fundamentally not Doom. He is borrowing an identity that does not fit. The armor can be modified. The name cannot quite be. Eventually, inevitably, he goes back to Latveria. The mask goes back on. He is Dr. Doom again, not because the attempt at something different failed. It didn't, not exactly, but because Dr. Doom is what he is. And the distance between what he is and what he was briefly trying to be is a distance that cannot be crossed entirely from inside the same skin. There is a brief period during this era where Doom joins the Avengers, which is a sentence I have to write slowly because it still feels slightly surreal to type. Dr. Doom, member of the Avengers. He shows up to the meetings. He has opinions about strategy. He disagrees with the other members loudly and at length, because his idea of working as part of a team is explaining to the team why they should do what he thinks, and then watching them eventually accept it. He is not wrong that he is an asset. He is not easy to be around. The writers who handled this period did something smart. They did not pretend Doom had changed fundamentally. He is still Doom. He is still absolutely convinced of his own superiority. He is still governing Latveria from a distance and making decisions that would give the rest of the team pause if they looked too closely. The heroism is genuine in the sense that he is actually fighting threats and protecting people. Everything surrounding it is still very much Dr. Doom. There is a line somewhere in the infamous Iron Man run where Doom reflects that being good is harder than it looks, and he says it with genuine frustration rather than self-pity, which is exactly the right register. What the Iron Man era reveals, and what makes it worth talking about, even though it is a relatively short arc in his long history, is that the impulse toward good is genuinely present in him. Not performed, not strategic. He wanted to be Iron Man. He wanted the thing Iron Man represents, which is essentially, I am using everything I have to protect people without other agenda. He wanted to be that, and he got partway there, and then everything that makes him Doom, the ego, the refusal to submit to oversight, the absolute conviction that his judgment supersedes everyone else's, pulled him back. He knows this about himself. He has always known it. There was a moment in the Secret Wars arc where he conceded, essentially, that the life Reed Richards is better at living is the better life. He acknowledged it. He just cannot quite get there from here. The gap between who he is and who he might have been is the same gap his mother fell into when she made her deal with Mephisto. The Von Dooms have always known what they wanted and always found the path to it impassable for reasons they partially created themselves. Something worth noting about Dr. Doom's relationships, not romantic relationships specifically, though some of these overlap, is that the people who have the most purchase on his actual character are women who are not fooled by the performance of it, not by the armor, not by the third-person declarations, not by the God Emperor routine. People who look at Victor Von Doom and see Victor Von Doom. Valeria is the first of these, and in many ways the most painful, because she is the one he lost earliest. She is the girl from the Romani camp, his childhood, his first love, whatever you want to call it at that age. She is there in the origin, in the expanded telling, and she comes to see him after he has taken the throne of Latveria. She's horrified by what she finds. Not horrified by the armor exactly, or by the robots, or by the fact that he's made himself a monarch. Horrified by the thing underneath that, which is that the Victor she knew, the boy from the camp, the one who was brilliant and frightening and still human, seems to have been replaced by something that has decided to stop being human. She says so. He removes her from his presence. And that is the last we hear of her for a very long time. He does not hunt her. He does not harm her. He simply closes the door, and what is on the other side of it stops mattering in the immediate operational sense, even though it manifestly still matters somewhere. Morgan Le Fay is a different kind of relationship entirely. Morgan is one of the great sorcerers of the Marvel Universe, Arthurian in her origins, extremely long-lived, with her own extensive agenda and her own formidable power. Her dynamic with Doom is something the comics have explored across various eras, and it is genuinely complicated in interesting ways. They are rivals sometimes, occasional allies. There is something between them that is not quite respect, because neither of them does respect unqualified, but is something like recognition. She is one of the few people who can meet him as an equal in the mystical dimension, and he is one of the few people who presents her with a genuinely interesting problem. Victorious Zora Vukovic is a recent addition to the cast of Doom's important relationships, introduced in current-era comics. She is Latverian, a young woman who breaks into Castle Doom and essentially demands that her king stop sulking and come back and run the country, because there is a civil war happening and his people need him. She hands him his mask. She says, "Here, now come and do your job." That image, someone handing Doom his mask back, and Doom accepting it and going out to be what he is quietly extraordinary. It implies that the mask is not just his. It belongs to his country. His people gave it meaning. When he puts it on, it is not only about Victor Von Doom's wounds and Victor Von Doom's armor. It is about the obligation he has accepted, whether he articulates it that way or not. Zora pays significant costs for her loyalty, including, in certain storylines, being asked to do things that test whatever she believed about who Doom is. He is not a gentle person to be devoted to. He makes demands that are difficult and expects them to be met, and does not always provide reasons. Her loyalty survives this mostly because she has decided that what Doom is at the macro level, what he does for Latveria, outweighs the specific things he asks of individuals. Then there is Valeria Richards. Not the same Valeria from the Romani camp. This is Reed and Sue's daughter, Franklin's sister, who may be the most intellectually gifted character in the Marvel Universe. The future version of Valeria Richards has been depicted as operating at a level that surpasses essentially everyone around her, and the relationship she has with Doom is one of the most genuinely interesting relationships in his orbit. She respects him, fully, without qualification, as someone worth respecting. And he respects her, which is, from Doom, perhaps the rarest thing possible. He does not talk down to her. He does not treat her intelligence as charming or surprising. He engages with her as a peer, which he does for effectively nobody else. There is a version of their dynamic across various secret wars and future storylines, where they work together in ways that are functional and even warm by Doom's standards. It is a relationship built entirely on mutual recognition of capability, which is the closest Doom gets to uncomplicated affection. Susan Storm is worth noting, though the relationship here is not close in the way some of the others are. Sue is not fooled by Doom either. She is never under the illusion that he is simply a villain or that the armor tells the whole story. And she tends to be the voice in the Fantastic Four who argues for engaging with him as a complicated person rather than a standing threat. She does not trust him. She understands him, which is different, and she is not wrong to distinguish between those two things. What these relationships collectively suggest is that Doom is, underneath the apparatus of himself, someone who responds to being genuinely seen. He cannot entirely prevent it. When people look at him without flinching, not without fear exactly, but without reducing him to what he is most obviously, he allows it. He does not always know what to do with it, and he frequently handles it badly, but he does not foreclose it entirely, which is, given everything, somewhat remarkable. The Morgan Le Fay relationship is worth a little more time because it is the one that is most explicitly between equals, and equality is not something Doom usually tolerates well. Morgan is ancient, genuinely so, her origins in Arthurian mythology giving her a history that predates Victor von Doom by well over 1,000 years. She is also, in her way, similarly motivated by the intersection of grief and power. Her story involves love and loss and magic as a mechanism for trying to correct what cannot be corrected. She and Doom recognize this in each other without ever quite saying so, which is the most Doom-compatible way a recognition can happen. Their alliance is always conditional and always slightly antagonistic. They have worked together on projects that required both of their capabilities, and the working relationship functions because each one trusts the other's competence, even while being entirely aware that the other's interests may not permanently align with theirs. There is something that might be respect in there, deeply buried under the mutual wariness. There is possibly something else too, across certain storylines, though the comics are typically not specific about it. What is clear is that Morgan Le Fay does not diminish Doom, does not treat him as less than what he is, and that this places her in a very small group indeed. The recurring thread in all of these relationships, Valeria from the camp, Morgan, Victorious, Valeria Richards, Susan Storm, is that the people who can engage with Doom as a full person, rather than as a symbol, are the ones he does not entirely close off. The armor keeps everyone at a distance, but the distance is not always infinite. Sometimes it is just very, very far, which is different from infinite, even if it does not always feel different from the outside. Susan Storm, specifically, is worth a longer look, because the dynamic between her and Doom is one of the more subtly drawn things in the Fantastic Four's long history with him. She is not his ally. She is not someone who trusts him, or who believes his stated intentions, or who would advocate for giving him any power he has not already taken. But she is the member of the Fantastic Four most consistently willing to engage with the fact that he is a person, a real complicated, historically explicable person, rather than treating him purely as the problem they need to solve this month. There are issues in the Byrne run, and in various later runs, where Sue is the one who notices when something Doom does is inconsistent with pure villainy, where she points out that he could have killed them and did not, where she observes that his governance of Latveria, whatever its moral costs, represents a kind of care that a straightforwardly monstrous person would not bother with. She does not excuse him. She does not romanticize him. She just refuses to be intellectually lazy about him in the way that fighting someone repeatedly can make it tempting to be. Doom, for his part, tends to treat Susan Storm with a particular form of acknowledgement that he does not extend to, say, Johnny Storm, or even Ben Grimm. He fights them, he dismisses them. With Sue, there is something slightly more like consideration. Partly this is tactical. She's genuinely dangerous. Her force fields are some of the most versatile defensive and offensive tools in the Fantastic Four's arsenal, and Doom is always going to respect capability, but it also reads, across enough encounters, as something more than tactical recognition. She is one of the few people who talks to him like a person, consistently enough that he seems to have noticed. There is a passage in one of the late Byrne issues, I am paraphrasing because the exact wording varies depending on which printing you have, where Sue essentially tells Doom that she thinks he is the most wasted potential she has ever encountered. Not as an insult, or not only as an insult, as an observation. The intelligence, the power, the genuine capability that he has developed and shaped into something that could have been extraordinary by different standards, aimed instead at a grudge against her husband that has consumed decades. She is not wrong. He knows she is not wrong. What he does with that knowledge is continue being Dr. Doom, because that is what he does with things he cannot refute and cannot accept. The thing these relationships collectively illuminate is something that takes a while to see clearly. Doom does not actually want to be alone in the way his architecture suggests he does. He has built himself into something that requires distance, requires isolation, requires the perpetual performance of absolute self-sufficiency. But the people he keeps around, Boris, the Latverians, Valeria Richards, Victorious, the occasional begrudging cooperation with Susan Storm, are all evidence that the performance is not the whole picture. He keeps letting people be near him. He does not foreclose it entirely, which is, given how thoroughly the armour forecloses everything else, somewhat remarkable. Dr. Doom has, for a character of his stature, had a fairly difficult time on screen. 3 attempts before the MCU, none of them particularly satisfying to the people who care most about getting the character right, and a 4th now incoming that has generated more conversation than any of the others combined. It is worth going through these briefly, because the adaptations say something interesting about what makes the character hard to translate and what might have finally changed. The 2005 Fantastic Four film, with Ioan Gruffudd, Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Michael Chiklis, and Julian McMahon as Victor Von Doom, made a specific choice that fundamentally altered the character's nature. In this version, Doom is present on the space mission that gives the Fantastic Four their powers. He is there, he is exposed to the cosmic radiation, he gains his abilities at the same moment as the people who will become his antagonists. He is practically a 5th member of the team who went bad. This is not in any mainstream comic continuity. It collapses the origin significantly, removing Latveria, the Romani heritage, the monks, the armour built in Tibet, all of the decades of backstory that give Victor his particular weight, and turns him into roughly a business rival of Reed's who becomes jealous and enhanced and villainous. Julian McMahon is not bad in the role, given what he's asked to do, but what he is asked to do is not really Dr. Doom. It is a version that fits more comfortably into a 2-hour origin movie structure, and loses everything that makes the character interesting in the process. The 2015 reboot is, if anything, further from the source material in the ways that matter. Toby Kebbell plays Victor Van Dam, they changed the surname, a computer programmer and genius who journeys to another dimension with the team and fuses with his suit, gaining telekinetic powers. The character has almost nothing in common with the comics version beyond the name and a vaguely adversarial relationship with Reed Richards. The film was a critical and commercial failure, and the Doom in it barely resembles the Doom anyone was hoping to see. What both versions share is the instinct to simplify, to find a version of the character that fits the constraints of a studio superhero film without requiring the audience to accept a medieval monarch from a fictional country who is also a sorcerer. The combination that makes Doom extraordinary is precisely the combination that is difficult to introduce in a film that also needs to introduce the Fantastic Four themselves and establish their world. The origin requires time, the character requires complexity. Studio films, in that particular era of Marvel filmmaking, did not always trust audiences with either. The MCU announcement, Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom in Avengers, Doomsday in Avengers, Secret Wars, is something else entirely. The casting is deliberately and explicitly strange. The most famous face in the MCU, the man who defined the tone of the entire franchise as Tony Stark for 15 years, has been cast as the character who is now supposed to be the franchise's ultimate villain. Whether this means Doom is some kind of variant of Stark, or the resemblance is plot relevant, or Marvel is simply using the recognition to do something nobody will quite see coming, we do not yet know. What the project files show from the Fantastic Four, First Steps material, is a glimpse of Doom that suggests the MCU is at least engaging with the character's mythology. The final image described a cloaked figure holding a strange metal mask, standing in the Baxter building with a young Franklin Richards, while Sue Storm looks on in shock, is recognisably Doom. Doom interested in Franklin. Doom present in the Fantastic Four's home without invitation. Doom treating a cosmic-powered child as something of specific personal significance. That reads like someone who has done the homework. Franklin Richards, in the comics, is a character whose power operates at a level that makes him genuinely significant to cosmic entities and enormously powerful beings. That Doom would take notice of him and would appear, not threateningly, but with the specific quality of someone who sees a future that others do not yet, is very Doom. The MCU's version of that moment is brief, but it implies a patience and a long-term thinking that is quite different from how the character has been handled on screen before. The gap between what Doom is in the comics, the full architecture of who he is and where he comes from, and what has been captured on screen so far is significant enough that even a partial success with the MCU version would be an improvement. Whether Avengers, Doomsday manages the full weight of the character, the Romani heritage, the dead mother, the relationship with Reed, the genuine love for Latveria coexisting with the tyranny of it, remains to be seen. But the pieces that have been shown so far suggest at least the intention of trying. The Robert Downey Jr. casting does something interesting that the previous film versions could not quite do. It arrives preloaded with audience emotion. 15 years of Iron Man. 15 years of Tony Stark being the centre of the MCU's emotional world. The character whose death at the end of Endgame was the culmination of the entire first era. The audience does not just know this face, they have a decade and a half of feelings attached to it. Whether the MCU uses that attachment as something Doom exploits, something the plot explains, or simply a meta layer of the experience where the audience's feelings about Downey become part of what the character means, we will see. What it cannot afford to do, and what the previous versions did repeatedly, is reduce Doom to a problem to be solved. He is not a threat to be neutralized. He is not a rival to be defeated. He is a force of nature with an entirely coherent internal logic. And the most interesting version of him is the version where the audience understands why he does what he does, even when what he does is wrong. The 2005 and 2015 versions gave the audience no reason to understand him because they had stripped out the backstory that makes him comprehensible. The MCU, with the time and the resources and the established world, does not have that excuse. Latveria is the element every screen version has effectively ignored, and it matters because it grounds Doom in specificity. He is not a stateless villain operating from a generic evil lair. He is a sovereign ruling a country with citizens who depend on him, and a history that explains his particular brand of authoritarianism. If the MCU puts him on screen as the king of Latveria, rather than simply a powerful antagonist with a mask, that single detail will do more work toward the character's authenticity than any amount of exposition about his powers. We will find out. In the meantime, the comics version has 60 years of extraordinary material and is not going anywhere. There is a quote in the Marvel database attributed to a version of Doom, the God Emperor version specifically, that goes like this: "Nothing can save you, save for the enlightened rule of a single person who can make the hard choices, one who is above being bribed, being corrupted, who does not care about petty comforts that confound other men. Doom is above money. Doom is above desire. Doom is above all. And in his magnanimity, in his pity, in his greatness, Doom will save you." I keep coming back to this, not because it is admirable. It is not, as a political philosophy, particularly defensible. But because it has a strange internal coherence that is hard to dismiss entirely. The argument is not that Doom is good. The argument is that Doom is consistent in a way that human institutions cannot guarantee. Elected governments change. Economic incentives corrupt. Personal comfort bends principle. Doom does not have personal comfort in the conventional sense. He cannot be bought because he does not want the things money buys. He cannot be threatened effectively because very few things can threaten him. He cannot be flattered into a bad decision because he has no particular need for approval. If you believed him, if you believed the content of the character fully at his word, this argument would not be entirely wrong. The problem, obviously, is that the person arguing for the uncorruptible single ruler is also the person who wants to be that ruler, which somewhat undermines the philosophical neutrality of the position. But that tension is exactly what makes him interesting, rather than simply a villain. A villain with a bad philosophy is just wrong. A character with a philosophy that has genuine coherence in some dimensions and catastrophic failures in others is a character worth thinking about. Doom is the latter. His motivation, traced all the way back to the Romani camp in Latveria, is fundamentally about control in the absence of control. He grew up in a world where his mother could make a deal with a demon and lose, where his father could try to save a life and be declared a murderer, where a baron could decide that the law was whatever the baron said it was, and there was no appeal. In that world, the lesson Victor learned was not that he needed to be a good person. The lesson he learned was that he needed to be powerful enough that the world could not do that to him again. The armor is the expression of this. Not metaphorically, actually. He built a suit that means nothing can touch him. He built a country that runs on his systems and his will. He built an army of robot copies of himself so that even his presence can be distributed without vulnerability. He built a time machine so that the dimension of when is not a constraint he operates under. At every level, Doom has been solving the problem of how to be invulnerable to a world that proved very early on that it would take things from him. And the thing he cannot build a solution to, the thing that all of this cannot quite address, is the original problem. Cynthia is free now. Triumph and torment resolved that as much as it can be resolved, but she is not alive. Werner is still dead in a forest. The scar is still there. The machine still failed. Reed Richards still exists, still being the version of the brilliant scientist who did not have to make himself into armor to survive. Doom is what happens when grief is processed entirely through the mechanism of power. He decided somewhere in that frozen forest or in that Romani camp or in front of a bathroom mirror with a small scar and a failed machine that the way to not be hurt by the world was to become something the world could not hurt. And he has succeeded, mostly. And it has not fixed anything. He contains multitudes, as I said at the start. He is genuinely capable of tremendous good. The evidence for this is not just the aspiration of the Iron Man arc, but triumph and torment, and the way Latveria is actually governed, and the relationship with Franklin Richards, and the relationship with Valeria Richards, and the moment in Secret Wars where he hands Reed the power because he knows Reed will use it better. The capacity is there. The path to it is just very specifically obstructed by the fact that Victor Von Doom cannot be anything other than Victor Von Doom, and Victor Von Doom is a man who decided at a very young age that control was the answer to the problem of existing. He is also genuinely funny, in a dry and completely unintentional way, which is part of why he has endured for 60 years. The third-person self-reference, the offended dignity when someone suggests he might have limitations, the way he processes being wrong. He usually insists he was not wrong. The circumstances were wrong. Reality was incorrect and will be corrected. The Doombots getting defeated while he was somewhere else entirely, and him arriving to survey the wreckage with the air of someone who is not surprised but is disappointed in the general quality of opposition he faces. The third-person thing specifically is worth a small tangent because it is so consistently present across all eras and all writers that it has become definitional. Doom does not say I, he says Doom. Doom commands. Doom has considered this. Doom finds your argument unconvincing, and it is easy to read this as simple ego. The man is so arrogant he has grammatically elevated himself. But I think there is something slightly more interesting happening. When Victor puts on the armor and becomes Dr. Doom, he is constructing a character. Doom is not Victor. Doom is what Victor built to survive the world. Referring to himself in the third person is, in a way, maintaining the distinction between the man inside the iron and the legend outside it. Victor feels things. Doom does not, or at least Doom acknowledges no feelings in front of anyone. The grammar is part of the armor. Various writers have circled around a question without fully answering it, and it is the most interesting question in the character's history. What would Doom do if he actually won? If every scheme concluded successfully? If the world was under his governance? If Reed Richards acknowledged his superiority? If his mother's soul was at peace and his father's death was avenged, and Latveria was secure, what then? The Secret War's answer suggests that victory would leave him empty, that the struggle is what he is for, and the conclusion of the struggle would strand him. But that is one answer. A more generous reading is that Doom has never actually wanted the destruction of the world he seeks to dominate. He wants it to be better on his terms, which means he would always find something new to improve, something new that needed fixing, some new problem that only the most powerful intellect and the most capable sorcerer alive could solve. He might, in that reading, actually be quite a good ruler of everything. Not kind, not gentle, certainly not democratic, but competent, genuinely invested, and in possession of both the ability and the will to address whatever came next. The tragedy is that we will never find out, because the path to that version of events goes through so much destruction that the outcome could not be worth it. Doom knows this on some level too, which is possibly why he never quite closes the last mile of any of his plans. The winning is not the point. The trying is the point. Trying is the one thing that has never been taken from him. There is something worth saying about why Dr. Doom, specifically, rather than any of the hundreds of other Marvel villains with comparable or greater raw power, has become the character that serious comics readers return to when they want to think about what villains are actually for. Because Doom is not simply the most powerful or the most technically impressive antagonist Marvel has produced. He is the most coherent. Every dimension of who he is connects to every other dimension. The armor connects to, the grief connects to, the need for control, connects to the mother's death, connects to the Romani camp, connects to the scholarship, connects to Reed Richards, connects to the scar, connects to the armor. It is a closed system. Nothing in it is arbitrary. That coherence is what makes him genuinely difficult to dismiss, even when you disagree with everything he does. He is not wrong that the world is unfair. He is not wrong that institutions fail, and brilliance goes unrecognized, and the people with power abuse it regularly. His premises are real. The problem is what he does with them. Correct observations about how badly things go when no one capable is in charge. Used to argue that one specific person should be in charge of everything. That logical step has never worked for anyone, ever. And it never works not because Doom is wrong about his own capabilities. He is genuinely exceptional, by any fair accounting. It never works because exceptional individuals die. They change. Their certainty calcifies. Doom has not made Latveria independent of him. He has made it entirely dependent on him, continuing to be Doom, indefinitely, which is a problem he has not quite solved despite various mystical attempts at the edges of it. He is a tragedy and a comedy and a meditation on grief, and a study in authoritarianism, and a love story about a dead mother, and a rivalry that defines two men for their entire lives. He is all of those things simultaneously. The mask holds all of them together, keeps them from leaking, makes the whole thing legible as a single character. That is why Dr. Doom has lasted. Not because he is the most powerful, or the most threatening, or the most technically impressive villain Marvel has produced. Because he is the most fully realised. He has an interior. The interior is accessible if you do the reading. And the reading tells a story that is, for all the cosmic power and the pirate heists, and the time travel, and the God Emperor throne, fundamentally about a boy who lost everything before he was old enough to hold on to it, and spent the rest of his life making absolutely sure nothing could be taken from him again. The armour worked, he is still losing things, and I think that is probably a reasonable place to let things rest for tonight. There is a lot more that could be said about Victor Von Doom. There is always a lot more. The character has been appearing in comics for over 60 years, and has been handled by enough writers and artists that the full scope of it is genuinely impossible to cover in a single video. I have not talked much about his relationship with Spider-Man, which is its own thing. There are issues where Doom and Spider-Man interact in ways that are both antagonistic and oddly respectful, because Doom recognises Peter Parker's intelligence even when he finds the man himself thoroughly annoying. I have not gone deep into all the Morgan Le Fay storylines. I have not touched the Counter-Earth alternate versions, or the Doom of the 31st century, or the House of M Universe version, where he ends up with liquid metal for skin after some particularly bad decisions. There is an entire arc involving Doom and the X-Men that I have only gestured at. Doom has, at various points, clashed with Wolverine, the Hulk, Name of the Submariner, across multiple eras, and essentially every significant figure in Marvel's roster, and each of those encounters adds a slightly different facet to the character depending on who is writing it and what they find interesting about him. The character's longevity is genuinely remarkable when you think about it against the backdrop of comics publishing, which has produced thousands of villains across the decades and forgotten most of them. Doom has not only survived but remained interesting, remained a character that serious writers want to write, that readers find genuinely compelling rather than simply familiar. Part of that is the visual design, which is so immediately iconic that it transcends any individual storyline. Part of it is the voice, that combination of grandeur and specificity that makes his dialogue recognisable even in parody. But mostly, it is the interior. The character has a soul in a way that most antagonists do not, and that soul is complicated enough that it has kept 60 years of creative teams engaged. If you want to go deeper, and I would genuinely recommend it, there are a few places to start. Ed Brubaker's Books of Doom, a 6-issue series from 2006, is an expanded retelling of the origin that is much more detailed than anything I have covered tonight. It is written as Victor's own account, dictated to a journalist, which gives it a particular flavour. Everything is filtered through Doom's own understanding of his history, which means the narrator is unreliable in ways that are genuinely interesting. He edits himself repeatedly in ways you can see if you're paying attention. Roger Stern and Mike Mignola's Triumph and Torment is, as I mentioned, essential. It is one graphic novel, reads in an evening, and it will change how you see the character. Hickman's Secret Wars is a significant undertaking, but rewards the patience. Beyond those, the Byrne-era Fantastic Four, roughly issues 232 through 295, is the place to see the character at what many people consider his most fully realised in the ongoing series. Byrne writes Doom with a consistency and a depth that the revolving door of Fantastic Four creative teams does not always manage. And there is a 2019 run by Chip Kidd and Greg Titus in a smaller format that takes a completely different angle on the character. More intimate, less cosmic, that is genuinely interesting if you want something off the beaten track. What I find myself thinking about, settling into the end of this, is the mask, not as a metaphor, though as a metaphor it is doing quite a lot of work, just as an object. Doom has worn this thing since Tibet, since the monastery, since he was a young man who had lost everything and decided that the only solution was to become something that could not lose. The mask has been on while he has visited Mephisto's realm, while he has held the power cosmic, while he has been the god of a constructed reality, while he has tried to be a hero, while he has gone back to being himself. It has been there for all of it. He picked it up. He put it on before it cooled. He has not taken it off since, not in any way that the world sees. That is an extraordinary commitment to a decision you made when you were grieving and furious and very young. Most of us make decisions like that and then quietly walk them back when the grief settles a bit, when life moves on and the original pain gets less sharp. Doom did not do that. He committed to the decision fully, built an entire identity around it, built a country around the identity, built an army and a sorcerous tradition and a philosophical framework around the country, and then kept going. The world did not adjust to Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom made the world adjust. There is something almost admirable about that, in a way that I am not sure is actually admirable. The scale of the commitment is extraordinary. The object of the commitment is still, underneath all of it, a boy in a Romani camp who lost his parents before he understood what he was losing. The armour is very heavy for what it is really protecting, but it is holding, and somewhere inside it, the sorcerer and the scientist and the monarch and the sun is still there, still working, still trying to find the version of events where things turn out better than they did. He has a time machine. He has infinite stubbornness. He has, in the specific and limited way that a man like Doom can have it, hope. That is enough for tonight. There is plenty more where that came from. Sleep well.